And we're live. Okay, so what I'm going to do is walk through the implement wireframe exercise the way that I would approach it, and the way that I recommend that you approach it. Do not try to follow along with this. It will go too quickly. I want you to look at big picture. You're not going to learn any syntax, anything like that from this demo. You've got the topic articles for that. We can do lessons, especially on like grid and flex and some of those things. Stay focused on big picture. What are the like workflow kinds of steps in this? When do the commits happen? And in particular, pay attention to problem decomposition. One of our habits of excellence is work small. So we want to take big problems and turn them into little problems, because little problems are easier to solve than big problems. All right, so let's pick and implement wireframe one. So do any requests?
You mean as far as which one to pick?
Yeah.
Not really.
We did service yesterday, so I'd like to see Connectly just as
Sure. All right. Connectly and
Steam. We didn't see Steam.
Yeah, Steam.
Or one, yeah.
Beautiful. Let's do Connectly and Steam. So first thing I'm going to do is grab this image and put it on the whiteboard so I can draw on it. Where'd it go? Should have been here.
Is it not that box behind it?
No, that's the display area. Unknown content. Okay, screw you. Let's do it this way. I'm going to take a screenshot of that.
Were we doing service or Connectly?
We're doing Connectly.
Oh.
By request.
Oh, John said they did service yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, so the first step of this is to make this problem smaller. That was something I could tell was not happening like a ton yesterday. Navbar, like that was good, and then keep doing that. So we want to figure out what the huge pieces of this are, and then turn each of those into their own problem. So some big pieces of this, probably that header bar. Probably this hero image. And then this section down here. All those are like the big macro parts of this. So the goal is to start turning this into like, this is just one specific problem. And then you keep breaking that down even further. So for example, each of these is one problem. And so rather than trying to think about the entire site, can you just make something that looks like that? Well, that's a lot easier than doing this entire wireframe. So we try to make the entire thing kind of work like that. Awesome. So first thing I want to do is like scaffold out this project. Pull up my text editor. This is Steam Connectly. All right, nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. If I make an index.html, if I make an index.css, if I make a README, if I go into my index.html, Do a little bit of scaffolding. My required attributes for the head are title and char set. The body. I'm going to put these like macro elements in here. So I think this first one is probably a header. I'm going to say all of this is, I could be talked out of it, but this is probably main. And then this thing here, I don't think has like a specific HTML element for like a hero image with a call to action on it. So that's a good candidate for a div. So I need a header, a div, and a main. While I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and label them. So this, and really, anytime you use a div, should probably have some kind of label on it, because like that's our generic container. So what is the concrete thing that we're using the generic container for? So I might say that the class of that is hero. Cool. That's a start. Let me link in this style sheet. All right. Seems like a mighty fine time to repoify this. Initial commit. All right, so I got my scaffold there. How about I head over to GitHub and make a new repo. Connect it to the remote. Skip push you origin master. All right. And
Hey, Kyle, I have a quick question for you, if you don't mind.
yeah, please.
Could you flip back to your terminal?
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed you put gcam instead of like the git commit or, git commit -m and then the message.
Gcam
He's gonna a shortcut.
Yep, that came with oh my zish.
Okay.
Git commit is short for git commit -am. The -a will stage any existing files that you have. Like it's redundant because I just staged them all up here, but gcam flies off my fingers really fast, and then it'll take your commit message.
Very cool. Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to the instructions here. Oh, one other thing I want to do is don't wait till the end to deploy. You should deploy as early as possible. So if I go over here to pages, master branch, root, save it, done. So now every time I push something new, that site updates. Like that's handy. It's not even if like you're only using it deployed at the end, get this stuff worked out when the site is nothing. It's so much harder to debug a deployment when you have a complicated deployment. Debugging a nothing deployment's easy. So that's what we want to do.
Is there a way to add photos through your terminal, or do you have to do that through GitHub?
Because yeah, it would be a little bit different on WSL, huh? because you'd be downloading it with Windows, and then you need to get it into WSL. So the right way, probably the best way to do that is to go to your WSL directory. So like, where is WSL? It's like download it with your Windows, and then find the path that you have to go to in Windows to get to your WSL stuff, and then just drag and drop it in there.
Thank you.
All right, back over the instructions. So let's take a look at what they're asking for us. Okay, we have this brand, we have the wireframe, we have the text and media content. Website is supposed to adhere to the general layout of the wireframe at maximum width. It's supposed to have a little bit of responsiveness. Use the supplied content, use appropriate color and typography, pass the wave test, and pass the HTML validator. All right. And then over in Connectly, we've got some navigation links that we need to do and features and benefits. Excellent. So in the spirit of decomposing the problem, next thing I want to do, figure out how I get the big pieces of this working. So here's what I mean by big pieces. Back over to this. There's some logical groupings happening here. Like these buttons are together. So that probably means they're intended to be treated as like one logical unit. Same thing with these. Or maybe even, I could be talked into this, since they're right next to the Connectly thing, there's probably like that, which is split into this and this. Like, so much of web design is figuring out what the boxes are. That's how I break that down. Ask me some questions about why I broke it down that way.
No, it makes sense after having to do this yesterday that they're not the same thing, so they need different containers.
Right. So let's throw them into the HTML, see what we get. Oh, I should probably start serving it up too. Oop. All right, so I'm going to npx light server. It's light dash server. Saw a lot of people doing light space server. That's a different thing. All right, so I'm seeing the nothing that I'm serving up. Now I need to figure out how to translate those boxes in the header.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Please do.
Because something I just noticed that you're doing that I can't figure out how to do. How do you get the different tabs?
Oh, so I'm doing that with Tmux. I think you have... No, WSL doesn't have different tabs. You just open different windows of WSL.
You can in the Windows that hack that you posted the other day, that gives
PowerShell?
you Ubuntu with, it gives you tabs to open.
Cool.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry.
And way better formatting of your theme.
Cool. But yeah, the tool that I'm using is called Tmux, Terminal Multiplexer. It allows you to pretend like you have multiple tabs in one terminal. And what's really cool is that, whatever, I'll blow your mind with what's cool about Tmux later. All right, stay focused. So, all right, I've got these. So now I got to figure out how to turn these, like translate these boxes into HTML. So like these first two, like big green boxes, like that's not left and right. It's more like I'm going to call the right one actions. That's what's happening there. You can either log in or register. Those are both actions. And the thing on the left, the inner blue box, the right one is navigation. The left blue box is the logo. So the logo and the navigation together semantically would be I'm gonna go with meta for now. I might change my mind on that, but I'll say that the header has 2 containers, meta and actions. And then inside of that, meta has an H1 and a nav bar. And then the actions have 2 buttons. Log in and register. So that's my H1, and then my navigation. Navigation bars like this are a list of links, so we use our list. This is another thing that I'm seeing some confusion on, is that what tag you use has nothing to do with how it looks. Even though like these don't have bullet points next to them, that's not what a list is. A list is a related collection of things. Strong is not bold. Strong is more emphasis on this part of the content than some other part of the content. And if you think about like Western culture, we bold things for emphasis. That's not the case in every culture. Some of them surround them with special characters. There's lots of different ways you can do that. We're describing that something has emphasis, not how that emphasis is visually represented. That's what HTML is for. So these are links. And features. And I believe I gave URL targets for these two. Should go to /features.html. There's a pricing and community and support. Okay, got a collection of links there. Then we have a login and register. And, oh, actually, those aren't buttons. This is exactly what I was just talking about. Those look like buttons. They're displayed like they're buttons. If they go to a URL, that's a navigation. Anchor is the semantic tag for navigation, not button. Button is, I want to take some action on the page. I want to show or hide something. I want to submit something. Like all of those are like button things. A navigation is an anchor link. So I'm going to change these.
Sorry, Kyle, to interrupt.
Please do.
While you're doing that, can't you anchor around a button?
You could, but like it would be. No, you really shouldn't. I actually can't think of a good reason why you would ever anchor a button.
It's just sloppy, huh?
Yeah. Because
Okay,
like,
cool.
So what that would be is like the button would be you click on it and then you attach JavaScript to that button that navigates for you. But we already have a thing that does that. That's what an anchor is.
Okay. Okay, cool.
All right, so is that going to the right place now? All right, these are going to the right place now. And I think that's all the content. Beautiful. So it should look like this at this point. Now, that's a pretty good place to throw a commit. So I could say something like git add index.html, git commit, add header content. Cool. That's like a thing that I could reasonably want to roll back. That's a pretty good unit of work. So now I want to style this a little bit. So the first thing, I don't think I saw anybody do this yesterday. We're going to use a CSS reset. So I'm going to grab the Meyer reset. And there's a few different ways we could do this. I'm going to CDN it. This basically means I'm going to use a link tag that just has all this kind of taken care of. I need to put it first so that my styles override these styles. But check out what happens when I save this. Everything looks exactly the same. That's what a reset does, is it gets rid of the user agent style sheet. Or just, it overrides everything in the user agent style sheet so that it looks like this. Which is, like, in my mind, a lot easier to work with, and will get around a lot of those like cross-browser issues that you were having. Because now, Safari and Firefox and Chrome and everything is working off the same blank slate. And so every style that I add should be at least reasonably closer.
So like the paddings and the margins that are normally added by default, that just removes it all?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
What's the name of that one more time?
The Meyer reset. And you've got...
Meyer
That's
reset.
at MeyerWeb.com.
Yep.
No, that's not. Oh, is it?
Yep.
This is the first time I've ever heard of this. This is very new.
Yeah, and all that's in that style sheet is this. This is the contents of it. Blows out margins and padding and border and any weird font size shit and the line height and getting rid of the default markers on the list style. And all of this just makes it so that we can override it. And by putting this link in, this is just linking to this style sheet. All right. Now, thinking about my my macro and my micro problems. If I'm just focused on this header and how I do these green boxes, all right, I have two things and I want to push them out to the sides. This is like, Flex was made for this. So I can target that header in my CSS. I can say display flex, and then I can justify the content, which is primary axis. Starts out left to right, primary axis. I can say I want those to be space between. And that, hey, it did it. Pushes them out to the sides. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I need to get this list to show horizontal instead of vertical. So, if I look at the HTML, there's the list right there. I'm going to give this a label so I can target that a little bit easier. I'm going to say that this is the primary navigation. And then I want to, for the UL is the thing that controls how all the list items display. I'm going to target primary navigation, select it, I guess if I'm using my vocab better. Give me the UL that's a direct descendant of that. And then I want I could do something like display flex those too. Do flex flow row no wrap. That'll make them all go in a line. All right, cool. And so then, can anybody spot why these are all in a row now, but they're not on the same line as Connectly? Anybody make a shot at why?
Connectly is in a different HTML element, the header, as opposed to the UL.
These are all different HTML elements. They all show up side by side.
Connectly is not a
tag?
flex.
Connectly is not flex. That's not why. What type of element is Connectly?
They're block elements.
Block elements. Both of them are. Even if only one of them was, that would be enough. But an H1 is a block element. A UL is a block element. So they show up on different lines. So I could maybe target meta and flex that. I could also say that I want my H1 and my meta. Nope, sorry, not meta. H1 and primary navigation to be inline block. Hey, cool. Starting to get in the ballpark. Next thing that's probably worth adding is just some padding in the header. And let's refer back to this. All right, so this has a ton of padding on the sides and very little padding on the top and bottom. So there's a cool shorthand for that with padding, where if you do two numbers for padding, the first number is top and bottom, the second number is left and right. So I could say top and bottom, I don't want a ton of padding, just a little bit, like 6 pixels. And then on the sides, I want like 48. And let's compare that. It's a little closer. Maybe a little bit more on the top and bottom. Yeah, I like that. Next thing is, how do they do links in this
Hey,
one?
I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, for the paddings at the top, is it okay that we're using like absolute
That's fine.
measurement? Okay.
Okay to use an absolute value. So next thing I want to do is this is probably less of a wireframe thing. Like, so the links are blue on this, and they don't have underlines. But we're trying to connect this to like the Steam style. So that's kind of where that comes in. Wireframes aren't mock-ups. A mock-up is like this is a picture of what it should look like. A wireframe is like, this is how things are like spatially related to each other. So if I head over to Steam, let's see what they got going on. Very nice. This is going to be an absolute fucking nightmare to get to pass accessibility. And it's because like it has this dark background with light text on it. It's hard to get enough contrast on those to pass wave, but we'll see. We'll work on it. So their links don't have underlines, and they're all uppercase. Check this out. Whether or not something is displayed in uppercase is a styling concern. That's not a content concern. So the sloppy thing would be to go in here and make this features like that. That's not what the content is. That's the content. What we can do is say, under primary navigation, any anchor should be text transform uppercase, and watch what happens when I save it. Booyah, achieved.
Man, we went and found an uppercase font yesterday.
Seriously.
Like browsing forever.
CSS has gotcha. So also they don't have underlines, so that one is text decoration, none. Looks like they do have some colors going on though. So that, oh, and they get lighter when you hover over them. So I want to know what that gray is. But it's the same as that one. All right. I'm going to convert it to HSL.
I noticed yesterday if you use the inspect element, it'll also tell you what those colors are without you having to have a separate color picker. It was a little bit helpful.
So what's hard about that is that you only if it's on that particular element, it might be inherited because color inherits. So it might be a parent element where that color was defined, and you can look it up on the computed properties. But like so what that would look like is I go over here, I inspect that. All right, I've got that. So like that one has the color on it, but if the color was on SuperNav container, it would inherit it, or logo, or content. So sometimes you have to track it down. If
Chrome did a lot better. It actually popped up a huge box and it had every little thing. So
what that is, that's the computed properties. Those are over here.
Right.
So you can also look at it there. You can also look at the user agent styles and stuff. But like sometimes those are overridden. Anyway, that's why I do it that way.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to set a color on this. And oops. Oh, I think that was the default one. There we go. Nope. Come on, dude.
Hey, Kyle, quick
Yeah.
question. Just on colors. So we used RGB yesterday because
Uh-huh.
that's what we could find on. I was using like my colorometer
Uh-huh.
app on my Mac. Like, is that okay to use like for like RGB, or is it better to use like hex or HSL?
Use HSL.
Okay.
Hex and RGB are super. You can't do head math with it at all. But it's all like there's no color that only gets described with RGB or hex or HSL or something. They are different ways. They're different models for describing the exact same thing. That's why that like you can put one of these in and it shows you what it would be in everything else. And so you can always convert between colors, color models.
Gotcha.
All right, so if I put that in there, there's a gray. All right, very nice. And then I probably also want to figure out what kind of gray they're using for the header. Because like, that's not black. That's like a really, really deep blue. So, yeah. There we go. So we'll grab that one. Make it the background color. All right. And then these anchors, let's see. I'm going to say every anchor actually should not have text decoration. And I'm going to default all of the anchors. Actually, I'm going to default the text for everything in the header to that. Oops, didn't inherit. Well, in that case, I can tell it to. There we go. And then the actions, anchor, same thing. And are all the links? They go lowercase, so it's like it's the opposite transform for their actions. I'm gonna do text transform lowercase for that. Hey, it's starting to look a little bit more steamy. The next thing that would make it look a little bit less screwy is maybe getting a little bit of spacing between those navigation items. So I could say something like a primary navigation LI that follows, or an LI that follows an LI in primary navigation should have a left margin of maybe something kind of like that. Not bad. Is that what they look like? No, they're closer together than that. Not bad. Okay, next thing that makes it look less screwy is typography. So, looks like these are all sans serif fonts. Serifs are the little feet at the bottom of the letters. And like another thing you can look for that's like a giveaway without needing to know a ton about typography is look at the shape of the letter O. If it's a perfect circle with a perfect circle inside of it, that's called a geometric font. So that gives us something to go off of. So if I look up Google Fonts, and I want to look at sans serif fonts, and I'm looking for something geometric. So like this Roboto, that's not geometric. Like it's a little bit of an oval, versus this Frodoka is a perfect circle. And you'll note that like the little ends of the letters, those are called caps, that they're rounded. That makes it a little bit funner, a little bit more playful. That's not what's going on here. We got really sharp, angular, computer game sort of caps on those. So a geometric font. Ooh, Montserrat. Montserrat is probably too thin. I don't know,
Montserrat
that's pretty thin.
gets pretty bold.
Yeah.
It gets bold. We used it for Ford.
Nice. Yeah, so let's use like a slightly heavier weight of Montserrat. Cool. Let's try. I'm going to go with medium. And let's get rid of Nunito from yesterday. Grab that import. And throughout the body, make that the font. And then fix this because it's driving me. Oop. Fix this because it's driving me crazy. There we go. Hey, that's starting to look kind of steamy. Their logo is substantially bigger and like it looks like a slightly heavier weight too. So I could say that the H1 should be like 24 pixels maybe. Oh, that's both of them. Cool. And I'm going to say all of the primary navigation should have maybe a little bit more distance from the logo. Hey, that's looking okay. And I wonder if I can, so I'm gonna change my font import so I get a pretty decent weight on it, like an 800 maybe. So all that needs to change is the import on that to add the extra font. Cool. And then I can say I want this H1 to be font weight 800, and it should fatten up. There we go. All right, next thing I'm noticing, Connectly and the navigation links all look okay, but these actions, see how they're like a little higher? They're not on the same baseline. So a good way to fix that is, since they're all being flexed by the header, if I align items center, I'll bet that fixes that. No. Ooh. Yeah, there we go. I also want a little bit more space between login and register. So under actions, I could say maybe like an anchor that follows an anchor in actions should have a margin left of 16 pixels. On browser sync. There we go. That looks a little better. All right, back to the wireframe. Cool. Let's say I did, like I'm trying to do it in the Steam style, and ooh, check that out. They have that little pipe that separates them. So that little pipe is not part of the content. That's another visual thing. Well, we can actually do that with CSS too. Check this out. So in any one of these, we can add a pseudo element. Like before this, have this pipe content. And it can be a little tricky to get these to style correctly. So like maybe I get rid of the spacing around that and see if it'll let me set the right margin for that. Come on, browser sync. Nope, that's not it. Oh, it's because I didn't terminate that. Hey, there we go. And then I'm going to cut that in half. Cool. And then last thing on the header, I think, was when you hover over those links, they're supposed to light up. So maybe it's like A with the pseudo selector hover should be, where's that gray? There it is. So this is one of the advantages of using HSL, is I want it to lighten up a little bit. Lighten up is changing the lightness. So now when I hover over these, maybe, yes, no, maybe so. Oh, it doesn't have enough specificity. I see what's happening. So that could be like primary navigation A. There we go. Is that how Steam works? Yes, no, and then also on those. So the login one was in actions, and so it would be actions A, hover. All right, now those do it too. I'm gonna, yeah. The actions are a smaller font on this. So you can do like font size 12 pixels. Cool. Awesome. That looks like a pretty decent header to me. I'm going to commit that. Questions about that?
Someone's kid really needs to be told hi to.
Oh, sorry. It's fine. I didn't think anyone could.
He's adorable.
It always looks easy. It's just when you get into it and you're not aware of like how do you get around the specificity, and then plus
Sure.
like what do I use, like as far as like which words to put, how many pixels, like I feel like that just comes with time. But watching you do it, like it all makes sense. It's just when I go to do it, it's not as smooth,
Of course.
Oh, baby.
It's almost
This
like...
is incredibly helpful, though. We're gonna be able to watch this, right?
Yes, correct.
This is amazing.
Yeah, it's almost like having 15, 20, 25 years of practice of this pays off.
Maybe just a little,
Question.
I was gonna say, everyone say hi real fast.
He is.
Hi!
Hi, buddy.
Ooh.
Say hi, Alex. All right, Daddy's got to work.
I think
Bye.
just knowing the difference in which elements are block and which are inline
Mhm.
would help a lot.
Sure.
I don't know if there's a graph out there somewhere, but
Which
Or do you just have
elements-
like a really good CSS resource that you would recommend as far as kind of like that this cheat sheet? Which ones do you use the most type thing?
Oh, like a cheat sheet kind of thing? I don't know that I do have a good one of those. But yeah, if you go to any of these, and like these are the defaults. You can make anything. But by default, like, see if they have a list here. Here's the block level elements, and then everything else is inline.
Very nice.
So for those pseudo selectors, MDN has been a great source for referencing any kind of tag and what kind of attribute we can use. But pseudo selectors is one thing I'm not really having a good time finding. What would you recommend on that front?
MDN.
Yeah. I see.
I guess it is a pseudo class, not a pseudo selector. Everybody calls them pseudo selectors.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. So we're connected, we're deployed. If I refresh here, hey, it's even live on the public internet. Love to see it. All right, so next thing that we want is this hero image. So all right, so that's going to be in this hero class. Let's do it this way. If I take that image source, I don't remember what the connectly one is. All right, cool. So that one, I'm going to download it. And move it from downloads into WebP, move it into here. So that's that dot. All right, now it's in the folder. I probably don't want it in the same folder with all my HTML files and stuff, so I'm going to make another one for it called assets. I'll move community into assets.
Real quick, while you're doing that, do you have a suggestion for those of us who aren't able to access our actual folders other than
Yeah, what was my suggestion?
The PowerShell?
What was
Like
my
when we
suggestion,
download,
half
we
an hour
can't
ago?
get to it
Right.
from Get.
So I gave you the solution for that half an hour ago. Who knows? Who remembers it?
You can Google where your root directory is inside of your Windows shell. The other thing we did yesterday to pull those images is I just did it in GitHub. You can
That's what we
add
did
files
it from.
and
Yeah.
stage them as a commit. Yeah.
But yeah, you
Okay.
Go to your file explorer, navigate into the WSL thing, and you can just drag and drop it from Windows into WSL.
So like I tried that last night, trying to do with fonts, and it, for some reason, it just kept saying not allowed to anything that was connected to, maybe it was because I was trying to go into Ubuntu, not WSL, so I'll have to double check that. But anytime I would like look at where I was on the terminal, it would not let me move anything into there until I got super shady
you
with
can't
my
do it
personal.
from Ubuntu. This is all Windows. Ubuntu can't.
Oh, no,
sync
it was.
Windows.
Yeah,
Right,
it was
we'll
Windows.
debug it
where I
another
was trying to
time.
move.
That's the solution.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got this assets thing here. And the source is assets.community.webp. We have to give it an alt text, so group of people in a meadow. And then if I go over to my page, I have an enormous image of people in a meadow. So what I really want to do is like constrain it somehow. Even better if I could maybe tie that into the size of the viewport or something like that. So zoom back out to header div main, this like the red stuff, this macro. Those could pretty reasonably be flexed. I'm going to do them as a grid though, and then I'm going to use that to kind of control the size. So this is all part of the body. So I'm gridding the body. I'm going to say that it has one column. I'm going to leave that out because if it's just one column and it's determined by whatever the size of the content is, you kind of don't need to put it in. But I am gonna put the rows. It's got 3 rows. One of them I want to be just determined by the content. The other one I want to fix the size. So I want it to be maybe something like 80 viewport height units, and then the rest of it I want it to be auto. So VH is whatever the size of the viewport is. That's your screen. 80 VH is 80% of that. I kind of wonder what that looks like. Oh, and I saw some people run into this problem. You can constrain an image by saying that like its max width should be the size of its container. There we go. Yeah, not bloody bad. And then I could change that to 90. Oh no, it's not going to get bigger because it's still keeping the proportions of the image. In fact, if I just do auto on that, I'll bet that stays the same. Yep. All right, that's fine. So next step of this is just this problem, just this middle red box, considering it all by itself. Without thinking of anything else, how do I get that, that text and some call to action button to overlay correctly on this? So what I could do is I could do like absolute positioning. If I make that hero a relative container, I could absolutely position the stuff inside of it. That's not a bad solution. But I need to do, like, to have 2 elements overlap, you're going to need to do something with positioning. So, yeah, let's do that. If I do hero is position relative, and I say the image, all right, that's in there. Then I need a paragraph, and then, let's see, is that a link? Where is it? Where did I put it? No, not that. I should have cleaned up before I started. I must have closed out the window. All right. Implement wireframe. All right, anything that's supposed to go there? Nope. All right, so I'm going to say that that is, no, that's a navigation link. All right, so it was join today. I'll send that to like a join HTML. And this was bringing our community together. Brining? I don't want to brine our community. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now these, that P in there, I want to give that a label. That's not just some generic paragraph text. That's like, call it a tagline. I'm going to call this the call to action. So we have a tagline and a call to action in here. Hero tagline. Hero call to action. And so I'm going to absolutely position these, which puts them, lets me control the left and the right and the up and down and stuff relative to that hero container. So I could say that the, oh, actually, no, I got a better idea. Those really are kind of one unit. That's another box. Yeah, I'm going to absolutely position this this box, and then this can just use regular normal document flow stuff. So if I think of that green box as a smaller problem, like that's not difficult to do. That's just like centering stuff. So I'm going to make I'm going to call all of that container the call to action. Call to action, and then, yeah, and then I'm going to get rid of both of these classes because they're pretty well described by the call to action thing already. Yeah, all right. So now what I'm going to do is the hero's call to action is absolutely positioned relative to the hero. And it's like, I don't know, 20% up from the bottom. Let's see what that looks like. Hey, cool, it worked. So then I can say I want the call to action to be, we got to get that gray in there. Both of them. Call to action anchor, and call to action hover, needs to be. There. All right, join today got it. Oh, the P didn't though. We're gonna do, and we don't want, we want maybe uppercase transformation for that. Call to action P. Excellent. Okay, so the colors are there. Let's get a sense of the scale on that. All right, so the P should be pretty big. Call to action P is like font size 72. Let's do. Too big. Cut that in half. Yeah, it's a little bit better. And then while we're at it, let's do a text align center. Nope. Is it because I absolutely positioned it? Ah. Oh, weird. Oh, I know why. Because the call to action. So take a look at the size of this box. It is centered inside of that box. Its container is too small, so it doesn't show up as centered in that. So I can take the entire call to action and just stretch out the, actually, I'm going to do that with, nope, just this one. So I can stretch out the width of the parent. There we go. And let's do that with the anchor too. And I'm going to make another one of these for just the anchor itself, like that, and then move the size into there. Okay, we're starting to get there. So the actual relative size of that button is actually not super far off. I'm going to bump it up to about 18. Cool. And I'm going to get rid of the, well, let's see. Let's take a look at Steam again. How do they do call to action buttons? Oh God, this site is so ugly. Okay, so they do this like white border kind of thing with an uppercase transform. So we want that with a border around it. So we can say that this should be display inline block. The reason it needs to be inline block is because we want to put a border around it. Border is part of the box model. So inline elements don't have the box model, but we still want it to otherwise be like a normal anchor would be. So I'm going to say that the border is 2 pixels solid, whatever this color was.
And so this is how you substitute making an anchor look like a button.
Exactly.
Mm.
Okay, to get that, it's probably also going to need some padding. And text align center maybe. Nope. That's doing it inside of the anchor. I don't want the anchor to be bigger. I'll bet I can margin 0 auto it to center it. Nope. All right, time to take a look at the actual element. All right, that's in there. Call to action is the thing that needs the centering. Wonder if that breaks the bring our community together, or just does it with. Yeah, there we go. That's what we want. And then this button, I'm going to margin top this maybe 16 pixels. Hey, that's pretty good. So when you hover over these kinds of things in Steam, it doesn't look like the color of the text changes, just the border, and the border starts out super muted. So I'm going to say that if I just dull this down a lot, what happens? And then on hover, instead of doing that one, if I make that the border that changes. There we go. And does theirs transition at all? No. All right, I was gonna say, it doesn't have to happen immediately. You can make it so that it like fades to whatever the change is. That's fine. All right. Would their call to action text be transformed like that? No. No, it wouldn't. All right, so for the P text, I'm not going to do that text transform uppercase. I do want to do it with the anchor, though. So I'll say that one is text transformed. And at this point, I don't think this is actually doing... I think this is only applying to that, so then I can get rid of that selector altogether. Beautiful. That's pretty good. Awesome. So I'm going to commit that. Add hero, and then I'm going to deploy it. Okay, so that is the hero section. Ask me some questions.
Kyle, what is a muted border?
So you see how like the border on that is gray and then it goes like really bright? Mm-hmm. So yep. Muted is like grayed, pastel, not vibrant.
Gotcha.
You can technically move the text into the image with grid, right? But this is just easier to do it absolutely.
So if I was gridding this, I don't know that would be easier. So I would have to, I'd have to overlay a grid on this image and then figure out where I wanted the start and end lines for all of that to be. That sounds harder than just saying it needs to be 20% above the bottom.
Not that we're going to be doing this on this example of the website or anything, but if you go back to the Steam page and you hover over like one of those recommended games, how do they get it to pop outside of the browser? Like if you're hovering over one of the like games or whatever up top, did you see that earlier?
I think that was a delay in the screen actually, because I saw that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just making sure I wasn't going crazy because I was like, it's outside the actual browser window. But
like
maybe
what it just did right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a screen delay that's just making it happen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everything is staying very, very contained.
Okay, never mind that.
Well, if you hover over one, it does display like a little window next to the cursor. You just have to give it a sec as you're hovering over. Like that one, bam. That's a window hover right there.
Yeah.
It wasn't a delay. Aha.
Oh, yeah, like No, like that's real. It's still within the browser though. It can't go outside the viewport. The viewport is like the law.
But how does that happen?
So this one is almost 100% done with JavaScript. And with JavaScript, you can do anything. But it's detecting the hover event. It's probably waiting to see if you hover out for 3 seconds or something. And if so, it adds that element into the DOM. And then whenever you hover out, it takes it out of the DOM.
Wasn't your paragraph and join today, was that not in the body element in your HTML?
It is right there.
Slightly unrelated question. You didn't have the English in the HTML. Is it only affected if like you're in a different country? And
no, it's because I haven't tried to validate this yet. I should. ENUS, I think.
I think it's just EN.
Good call. So like I might make that a commit. Anything that's like a little fix like that. Also, that's a good point. I haven't tried validating this yet. Rather than waiting all the way to the end, how about I do some of that? Oops. So if I copy all this, and then go to the validator. Oh, since it's deployed, I could probably just give it the deployed URL too. Hey! Excellent. Oh, are links single-ended? Maybe that. Yep, yes they are. Glad it caught it. So if I copy that again. Hey, look who passed validation. Booyah! And then if I do wave accessibility as well. Let me deploy this real quick. Fix errant link ending. All right, so if I deploy that and then put the deployed URL in. So the thing that I'm anxious about is I mentioned that doing light text on a dark background, that is tricky to get enough contrast on. And I'm not sure that I did it. Two contrast errors, what do you know? Language missing or invalid, so that's the thing that we just fixed. I don't think it's up there yet. Very low contrast. So what were the things that were low contrast?
That's what it's highlighting on your picture, right?
Yeah. Oops. Hold on, I wanna do these one at a time. All right, so yeah, both of those, that's rough. Here's a trick that you can do. I think somebody mentioned yesterday, like, oh, but what if it's like over the image and it's up in the clouds and you can't read it anymore? Check this out. A really slick trick for that is, there's even a lot of web devs that like just do not know that this exists. You can filter images in CSS. Yeah, so if I do something like filter and then do something like contrast, and try to lower the contrast on it. You can also put color washes over them. So let's see. Oh, no, what you do is over this entire hero, we can put like, this is getting a little hacky at this point, but you can, inside here, make like a color wash element. This is not semantic. This is just the appearance, but sometimes we gotta. I'm gonna call that color wash. For it to show up in the DOM, it needs to have content. So the trick for that is a non-breaking space. And then you can say like this color wash, we're gonna absolutely position that also. And let's see, position, absolute. And then we're just gonna stretch it out over the entire thing. So top, bottom, left, right. And then we're gonna set a background color that is, this might be new to you. HSL A. The A stands for alpha, and it means transparent. So we otherwise works the same way, except we get another element that is how see-through it should be. And if we do that, hey, it's kind of got that tint to it now. So I could lower that. If I raise it, Z index might be too low. Z index. So I can see it under it. So if I raise its Z index, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. So you can wash out that color, but you can still see the image behind it. And then if we did that with, and then if we put the hero or the call to action stuff on top of that, I'll bet it pops.
So now, real world, practically speaking, we'd change the color of the font or do something to make it stand out if you weren't copying a website, right?
What you would probably do is just modify the image directly.
Okay.
You'd Photoshop it to help it get more contrast. For us, let's do maybe this color. So that was 36, 4, then 76. So if I try to wash it that way, oh no, I want to use that. I know what I want to use. I want to use the steam blue.
Now, before you did the Z index, which that brings it forward, right?
Correct.
Because you put a div element on top of the call to action. So before you did the Z index, wouldn't that have made the call to action inaccessible?
Yes.
Because the div was on top of it? Okay.
Correct. Good catch. Well done. And then I'm going to rocket up the lightness on that text too. Yeah, there we go. Now it's starting to come together. Same thing with this one. All right. And then that's a little... All right, I'm going to get rid of my contrast filter since I'm using the color wash. Oop. Lost something. Should have been just the contrast. The color wash should be taking care of some of this. Maybe it was, it's the opacity. Let me try to bring that back up. There we go. So we can use this to kind of tweak how much contrast it has. The best way to do this is by doing it directly on the image, but I'll bet that if I stage this and say add color wash, all right, that should take care of some of that contrast. Language validator missing, we should be fine on that now. And then what is it? So it was concerned that this might be a heading. Because I made it really big, it's not a heading. It does not describe a section of content, but that's why they, yeah, maybe. So there you go. If I try this again, still it still hasn't gotten the washed out image yet, but that error went away. All right, we're gonna come back to that. So that should get us there on the hero. So last part of this was this content down here. So I want to figure out how I can make this a smaller problem. I'm going to think of this as that heading and then this section here. So that means this is H2 connect with other users like never before. Cool. And then let's apply a style to that. So we could say the H2 should, we could maybe use that, like things like this are why colors are kind of interesting to learn as a web developer. So if I use that same blue I was using on the background in the header, you don't explicitly notice it. You've never looked at a site and like thought that that's what was happening. It just subtly connects stuff together in kind of an interesting way. There is a ton of space above that. Let's say margin top is like 48 pixels probably, and the font size of it is, well, should I make that part of the heading or do I make it part of the actual container? All right. Instead of margin for the heading, I'm going to say that that's padding for the main. So I'll say like padding top is 48 pixels. And this is probably like 36 maybe. That's not 36 pixels. So now I check over here to see if the rule took. Ooh, it didn't find it? Why didn't it find it? Sometimes like light server just gets stupid. I just need to kill it and refresh it. There we go. All right, awesome. Ooh, this is interesting. So this padding that we did on the left there, that also should be done in the main. So this padding. So that is probably something that we want to extract out so that it's something like header and main both have this same kind of padding. And then that should help that line up. Yeah, so now there's a straight line going from here to here. And, oh, interesting. So this looks like, see how the text wraps on this? That's making me think that this entire thing is one grid. So I got the that green box wrong. What this is actually like is a grid that looks like that. Yeah, that tracks. All right, so anything I need to change over here? Not yet. So I'm going to say that main is a grid. Display grid. It is a 2-column, 3-row grid. And the columns are evenly spaced. Is everything evenly spaced? It might be. All right, I'm going to start with the columns. So I'll say grid template columns 1 FR, 1 FR. It stands for like, it's a fractional unit. You can also do repeat 2, 1 FR. Does the same thing. That so if I do auto, it makes it so that whatever the content is, that's what it ends up being. FR is whatever they end up being, I want them to be exactly the same. So that should, hey, and there we go. Now it's wrapping correctly. Drop a beat, it's wrapping correctly. I'm unfortunately pretty proud of that one. Okay, so I've got that one in there. And then these, what we're going to learn one of these days is that these are called components. It's something that we just plug different content into. But otherwise, they're sort of structured the same. So let's make those. Let's make them divs. And I am going to individually identify these. So it'll be like feature benefit 1, and then that'll have stuff in it. Specifically, the stuff that it has is another heading. I think I have content for this too. Did I lose it again? Implement wireframe. And Connectly was, all right. Chat in real time. And then the benefit of that was that. And then it has a call to, like, okay, so then it has like a secondary action on it. So we're going to do that with a link also. Okay, cool. So now I'm just going to copy that a few times. 1, 2, 3. We're going to increment those. And we have organize events. And play favorites. And earn cred. Then copy and paste this content in. God, cred with a K does sound like something that Steam would do. Cool. Copy that in. Okay, so we should have like a decent selection of content. And since we have not placed anything in the grid, it is trying to automatically do that for us. So I can think of a couple solutions. I'm not even sure I like the one that I'm going to do. That's probably the easiest. So I could say feature benefit 1 is on grid row 2 and spans 1. Yeah, and is on grid column 1 and also spans 1. So that'll probably start piling them on top of each other. Maybe. We'll see. And, oop. Won't do anything if I don't get the syntax right. Okay. So let's try 2, 3, 4. So this one should be on grid column 2. This one should be on grid row 3, column 1, column 2. Hey, cool. Oops, something's goofy with my anchor syntax there. Come on. Not doing me any favors. All right, that's a little better. Now, these were supposed to look like... Actually, I'm not even going to just do that color. I'm going to do all of main as that color. And I'm going to say that this has a bottom margin that pushes the content down a bit. Or no, you know what that is? That's padding inside of each of these like grid cells. So a good way to do that, let's see, main. Anything that directly descends from main has a padding of 12. Oh, maybe we can tap into that. No, it wouldn't be the same. What happens if I do 16 up and down? Let's just start there. Okay, not so bad. All right, that H3 needs a little bit of weight to it. Font weight. I have that. Oh, the 800 weight's probably too much. I also have a 500, I think. Maybe that's not too much. Yeah, that's good. All right, so I've got that. That should probably also push down just a little bit.
A question, could you not grid out the connect with users like you did the feature benefits?
I did. It's on the same grid.
Oh, did I just miss it in your CSS? Oh, I meant like, could you not place it in the grid?
I did. Look
or
at
you
it.
just wouldn't? Oh, it just doesn't. Okay. The other one was just for actual placement where you wanted those individual ones. Okay.
Since it's the first thing, it automatically goes to the first grid cell. If you're like, so watch what happens when I take out the placement of these. Any day now. Like, that's how it automatically does it. Because I want that one to be blank, that's why I have to place the other ones.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. All right, so I've got that going. It looks like that paragraph text inside of a feature benefit. Oh, so I want some way that I can talk about all feature benefit ones. So I might say feature benefit as a class to all of these. So I can target that. And then I can say like a feature benefit paragraph should have a margin bottom of 16 pixels. Pushes that down. And then I probably, since this is still like, oh yeah, we got to figure out a way to make this look steamy. Doesn't look especially steam right now. All right, so some things that'll make that look more steamy are if we take the anchor and text transform it. I believe they would also probably text transform those H3s. Ooh, why didn't that take? Maybe that's just. Nope, not the 2. 3. There we go. So that looks a little bit more Steam-like. I guess Steam probably would reverse these colors too. Man, I really don't like those. So the main, this would be the background color again. And then the color would be one of these. Yeah, that's starting to look like Steam. And then that anchor, probably this. And weight should probably, since it's reversed, the weight should probably go up on that. Font weight. 800. Now it looks exactly like the H3. Never mind, I don't like that. I'm gonna put back the text decoration on it though, just to make it more clear that it's a link. So I'm gonna do text decoration underline, override the override that I did already. There we go. It's better. And these feature benefits, I'm going to put more padding. I'm going to put more padding in all of this. Maybe just the feature benefits. Every feature benefit, I want to have a padding bottom of 36 pixels. That learn more just runs into that heading too much now? Yeah, that's a lot better. And then I'm also going to do that in that first one with the H2. Oops, that's a margin bottom. And not so much. There we go. Awesome. That's not bad. So let's go back to the checklist. Actually, I'm going to commit that. Add features and benefits. Deploy it. And this is a good time to go back over the original checklist.
Real quick, one question I do have. So if you wanted to say span the, can you go back to the website you scanned, the look of it? if you wanted to put that connect with other users like never before over the span of both columns, so it was more evenly spread, would you just not include that in the grid at that point? It'd be its own separate box?
I probably would have, but if I want to do that normal-like, I could say that it spans 2. And now it spans 2.
And if it was too big, would it then automatically wrap back to column 1? Like,
it would stay in the same thing. So if we look at the grid for that, like it's crossing this cell. If it's too big, it just wraps around. It stays in the same cell though.
Okay.
Those grids on the inspector make so much more sense now.
Yeah. And like they count the lines too. This this screws people up a little bit. This left thing, that's the first line. That's the second line. That's the third line. First line, second line, third line, fourth line. So as you're placing things, that's how they count.
So using those lines, when you're doing your grid rows and your grid columns, is it equally viable to not put span in there and say grid row 2/3?
Yeah.
Grid column 1/2.
Exactly. So yeah, if I did that.
Same thing.
Exact same thing.
Okay, and there's no practical reason to use one over the other, really?
So the advantage of this is it describes what I mean by this, I think, a little bit better than going from column 1 to column 3. I don't care that it's column 3. I want it to take up one cell. And so I think that span 1 communicates that better. So that's why I do it that way. Because remember, the computer doesn't understand any of this shit. Like, the computer just understands beeps and boops. And so this is for us. This is for us to remember what we were doing. And so when you write code, don't write it for the computer. Write it for the person you're working with who has to figure out where your head was at.
Can you set a viewport height for a grid?
Yeah. Anything that takes a size unit, you can set a viewport height on. That might not do what you think, though. So like right now, the viewport is from the bottom of this URL bar to the top of this. And so that's, I don't know, 400 pixels or something like that. So if I set something to 100 viewport height units, that just means 400 pixels. Until I do this, then it's 800 pixels.
So I was taking a look at this. For your call to action text, is that position on that, is that relative to the image itself? Because I noticed as you went into like when you went into the CSS validator, it moved up significantly on the page.
Yep.
So
this right here, this hero, that position relative, when I say that I want this call to action to be 20% from the bottom for that, that's relative to this hero. So that box, the bottom of it is 20% from the bottom of this relative container.
I think this is what broke me on my personal website project. So, because I was like relative, and I just had it going to the main page itself and not to the element that it was inside of. So I want to try to understand that better.
Excellent. Hey, look who passed WebAIM. So next thing I need to check is if I pass validation. Hey, pass validation. I pass accessibility. If I go back over to the checklist, Yes. We'll take a look at the responsiveness in a sec. Yes, 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 yes. So in the rubric, check, no, check, check, check. Yes, 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 yes. All right, so this responsiveness thing, here's how you test this. So you open this up and you turn on this thing here. That emulates what a mobile device would be doing. So the first thing that breaks on this is that looks like a teeny tiny desktop site, not an actual thing. You actually pick the device too. So it's like, I want to be a Galaxy S10. I'm like, oh no, looks like shit, right? So you get so much of responsiveness out of the box with one tag, meta responsive tag. I never remember it. I copy and paste it every time. And watch what happens when I do this. So I got the emulator on. Throw in the meta tag. It's the viewport thing. And then, hey, at least things are like kind of the right size now. Even if they have other issues. You get a lot for free with just that one. All right, so some other stuff that we need to do to make this responsive. Is it 360? Is that the target?
375, I think, is your target.
375. So I could say that this is 375. And then the vertical axis kind of doesn't matter. So I need to figure out a way to do this header in a responsive way. So I could say, like right now, what am I doing with the header? I'm flexing in space betweening. So I could do a media query where I say max, let's see, max width, and then this is up to 365 is the lowest. So what I want to do is like figure out when this breaks. So if I start stretching that out, when does the layout that I did work? And it looks like it's about 800 is the last time that works. Like that header's pretty good. Actually, the entire layout works just fine up to 800. As soon as I go below that, it starts kind of collapsing and falling apart. So at a max width of 800, anything that I put in here is going to get overridden. So like I could put all these in there. Which of these do I want to override? Probably not the colors. Probably all of this. So I could say that I want the flex flow of this to be column instead of row. What does that do? Maybe nothing. Oh, weird. That's not triggering. Oops, mad at me about. Oh, come on,
yeah,
dude.
I was about to say. I thought I saw that on there.
You still have to use the selector. So most of the time I'm writing Sass, which works a little bit differently. All right, that's a little bit better. So still has those links, everything's centered, but all right, now we're starting to get somewhere. So those navigation links, that's kind of the next one. So I'm going to override, reuse this selector. I want to, instead of flex flow row no wrap, yeah, what if we just do column no wrap on that one too? All right. And then inside of meta, where's meta? Not on here. So I could say that
we got rid of meta. What do we just oh no, we did have meta on there,
Yep.
I think.
So let's see. Okay, see how all of those go in 1, 2? Anybody know why that's happening?
That was your adjacent sibling.
That's my adjacent
thing,
sibling
right?
thing. So that's probably something that I want to override. So I could say that and like margin left 0. Does the same thing as a reset. I'm doing it here, I'm resetting it here. And now they don't do that
So
anymore.
the at media, where does that come? Because this is what broke Lauren and I yesterday. Like we spent forever trying to get it to adjust.
Yeah.
The at media, I just don't know where that came from.
So I've got content for it in the LMS, but at media
Okay,
is how
haven't
you
gotten
say,
there.
I only want to apply this style under these circumstances. And it can be the width of the viewport, which is what this is. It could be if this is being printed, or if this supports touch interaction. Like all of those are things that you can query for.
So could you say like max width viewport and that would work too? Or is it better to specify an actual pixel amount?
No, you can't do because the max width is looking for the viewport. So it needs to be like some size that it can check.
Okay.
So
I have a question.
Menu I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Could you set the menu that on a mobile device it would turn into a mobile menu?
Yeah, totally.
With the
So what you would do is you take the other menu and you'd hide it when the viewport is too small, and then show some other thing. And when the viewport gets bigger, you hide the other one and show the other one.
Question.
Could you know how to do that one day?
Yes.
Okay.
My question was, because this is a cascading sheet, wouldn't it be better just to put that one media max width at the bottom rather than putting it in like 5 times?
Because I'm using different selectors for all of them.
But you could put the selectors under the media inquiry because it's cascading, correct?
No.
Okay.
I
thought we did that in the pre-work.
So this is exactly like doing this, except that only shows up if you are if this condition is met.
But under that, can't you put another selector? Because that's what I did in the pre-work. So I had all my mandatory stuff together.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. So I was very confused when you said no.
So the reason I want to keep these together, who knows why I'm putting the media query next to that rather than having one of these down at the bottom that has all my mobile styles in it.
Right. Because it's for organization purposes.
Organization purposes. I want to keep this stuff together so that when I inevitably change it, the desktop style and the mobile style for this thing are in one place. So when I redo this HTML and like all this stuff changes, I can do that and move on with my life rather than trying to get rid of that and then try to find that in my mobile styles.
It also could be, I just thought, maybe it's different because maybe your element doesn't break at 800.
Sure,
for
like
that
that too.
Element. So you could keep it for one and then it only breaks at a certain element and that's changed it up. Okay.
Move those over. Oh. All right, so now we got to figure out why this is choosing to be this way. Ah, that's why. So we want to set, like, flex overrides any kind of like width considerations. So we probably want that in there. That'll help. Hey, not bad. And then, all right, that's showing as inline block right now. When we're in this, situation, we want both of those to be block. Hey, you're starting to get somewhere. Okay, it says margin left from primary navigation UL. Primary navigation UL. Let's kill the margin on that. Beautiful. And then one last thing. Let's get that. The actions. What's their story? Actions need to be 100% also. Oops. Actions. All right, not bad. I can probably make that look maybe just a little bit less shitty if I give it a margin top of 16 pixels. And oh hey, since I'm here, why don't I just do it at the bottom too? All right, now I have a responsive header. So if I make that little down to, oh, say 375, header looks okay. And then when I get over 800, it flips back to that. Now I need to take care of this. And this is the whack-a-mole of doing responsive design. Because now, actually shoot, you know what? I'll just throw these into a media query, and I'll bet that all goes away. Yeah, all right. So now we're back to awesome desktop, totally acceptable mobile header. The hero works pretty good. Nothing needs to change the E. Let's see, why isn't that wrapping? So this is absolutely positioned, that's fine. Oh, because it, God, it ignores the document flow now. I see. You know what I would do is on this call to action in the paragraph, call to action paragraph. Cool. So what I would do here, oh, am I doing min or max? Max width. I would just hide it. It doesn't need to have the exact same content. So I would probably just do display none. Get rid of it. Cool. Wonder why that button doesn't keep going over.
Is it the absolute position?
It has to be something about that, which doesn't super surprise me. Where's the button on this? All right, so what I'm going to try to do is margin left. Oh, I don't know if it'll let me do margins with an absolute position thing, though. Oh, no, I know. I'll do left 0, right 0. Oh, no, because that won't work. That'll put it off to one side.
Would centering it work, or is that that's part of it?
Well, centering it relative to what is the kind of the problem. So that would be to this call to action. Is it still inline? Yes, I might be able to center it on the call to action. So that would be like, oh no, but it should already be centered. I think that's why it's centered now. Why will it not go farther than that? Heroes there, position relative, call to action, text align as center. So yeah, if I don't do that, it sends it over to the side. I don't know why it gives up on it at some point though. What if and this is also like a pretty good CSS troubleshooting thing. You just write your CSS in here also. So if I do like margin 0 auto, nah, that didn't do anything. Is this flexed? No. Could it be flexed? So if I do display flex and justify the content to be centered. Okay, I see what it is. You see how it stops making the image smaller at some point? That's because it's trying to preserve the size of that image. That's the problem. And so it's all doing it relative to that. That kind of tracks. So what I'm going to do is that image thing that I had where I did max width 100, I'm just going to do width 100. Wonder if that fixes it. Hey now. Maybe? Yes, no? No, at some point it just won't make that image any smaller. Oh, that's better though. A little off to the side, but whatever. Moving on with my life. So last thing we need is, this is too big on mobile. So that was the H2. I'm going to grab a media query for that. And say, how about it's 20 pixels on mobile? Maybe a little bigger. Although, So,
on mobile, you could just have it span across both.
No, I'm just looking at the text size.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit bigger. Yeah, that's better. All right, and then I can do this a couple different ways. Probably the fastest way to fix these is, like, you could either change the template for the grid, that's valid, or you could do like each of these individually. I'm going to do each of these individually. So this would be like that. And I want to change the row and the column that it uses. So it'll still have like a 2x3 grid, no, I will need to change the grid because it'll have. Oh, I'm not tracking rows. Never mind. Never mind. This will work. So I am going to say that this should be on the second row and span 1, and then I'll say that it should be in the first column and span 2. And then I'm going to do that for like each of these. So for that one, it should span 2, and it should be on the third row, and this one should be on the fourth row and span 2, and this one should be on the fifth row and span 2. All right, so if I do that, moment of truth. And then I gotta fix that so that it uses, where's my H2? I'm already in the media query. I'm gonna say that this is grid row 1 and spans 2 columns.
So that's where like separating out your columns and rows makes sense.
Yep. One last thing. This has too much padding. Yeah, it does. Is that in the heading too? Yeah, let's have a lot less of that. So copy that rule. Tops are probably fine. What if it's just 12 all around? What's that look like? All right, slick. Looks pretty good. And then if I make it a little bigger, works pretty good big too. All right, so add responsiveness. That's deployed. If I go to the instructions, yup. I do want to do one last check on Wave and W3C, but otherwise, yes. And if I go to my deployed site, that's probably a little too big on a big screen. Whatever, it's fine. Wave accessibility. No errors. Document validation. HTML. Pew pew. I'm calling it good. So that's how that works. I would expect none of you to be able to do that. I would expect none of you to be able to do that as like the way that I did it by the end of this program. Like I said, I've been doing this a very long time. But that is what I think a professional workflow for turning a wireframe into a site sort of looks like. Ask me some questions about it.
I have one, because assuming if we did whatever that one, Connectly yesterday, we'll be doing service for our next one.
Correct.
Can you just give me an idea of what you would do for that grid?
Yeah.
I
think that one is easier, if I'm being honest.
I was looking at the bottom right frame.
So this is like flex by the numbers. So I would not use a grid for this. This whole thing is one flex container, and then just let the units wrap. So
can you share your screen so we can see what you're talking about?
Come on. So treat all of this as one box, and don't try to put it in a grid. Treat it as one line that wraps, because all of this, like the "you're in good company" down to the bottom of this image, all of that is one thing that maybe you grid that and do one FR, so that they're the same thing. And then that's going to constrain the width of this. This is all one container, and it just wraps. You probably don't even need flex for that.
And then if you scroll down on that one, there's that guy at the bottom right is where I kind of had questions.
So this one, I'd probably do the same thing. Like maybe this part of the footer is a grid, and you do a 1FR, and so that makes this right side of it, that makes that its own problem. And then I might make that a grid also. And that one is like 1FR repeat 4 times. And so it ends up being a 4-column grid where each one of those is the exact same width. And then at that point, this like product, features, pricing, promotion, you're just solving that problem. You already did the macro layout by putting those in 4 columns.
Okay, yeah, that helps a lot.
Good question.
It was comforting to see that it was not like 12 minutes for you, which is what I was expecting.
Well, there you go. More questions?
That part you did at the beginning where you mapped out and basically drew boxes around the different elements.
Mm-hmm.
When Efren and I did group work yesterday, we didn't do that for the nav bar, and it took us a pretty long time. And then we mapped out the main section, and it seemed to go by a lot quicker. Yeah. So I think that step is really, really important.
Yes,
seems like it at least.
Well, like as long as I've been doing this, I still do that. Like that's not a step that like I skip when the students aren't around or something like that. I'll do it either with a whiteboarding tool like that or just on a whiteboard. But yeah, I always do that. All right, clear as mud. So, all right, that's a lot of jibber jabbering. Go to lunch, take a break, do something else. I'm going to punt the afternoon activity. We'll just do that another time. Leave the rest of the day open. Start reading, start learning, start cranking. Use the queue. And otherwise, I'll see you at 3. Or no, I'll see you at 4. Cheers.
Thanks.